All right, so welcome to the February 15th Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. And we are beginning our meeting with Darcy Milliard, who is our school nutrition director. And Pete, I don't know if you want to do any more introduction about the update that we're going to receive, or if you want to just go ahead and start with Darcy.
Darcy Milliard.
I think we've got Pete's multiple cameras going.
Yeah. Okay, I think I got it straightened out here. We are still live and only one audio source.
All right, and who knows what that audio source
So-
is, but Pete, go ahead.
So earlier this year, when we were planning the finance facilities agendas for the year, we decided that we wanted to hear from Darcy and the nutrition program midway through the year. And because the food service program follows the school year, the end of January is approximately halfway through the year. So this seemed to be a good meeting to do it in. We had the financials through January, thank God, because Darcy is on it. She gets the financials and the revenue side done by the 8th of the month. So we can get our reimbursements back from the state in a timely manner, but it also helps inform the board as to where we stand. And right now, we're standing in a pretty good place like we were last month, where we estimated the last meeting. We are almost breaking even through the first 5 months in terms of revenue and expenses, not including the subsidy that we raise through the budget process. But with that, we'll have some excess revenue, we believe, this year, enough to take our deficit down to zero, and enough to possibly do some other things that we'll talk about a little later in terms of account balances. So I just thought it'd be a great time to talk to Darcy about where she's been in the program, where what's going on now, and kind of the vision for going forward, and kind of in a way, this is kind of a outlines her vision, which for us kind of outlines what the budget might look like. Is that about what we talked about today, Darcy? Okay. So Darcy is this is your third year in the position. You're muted. You're muted.
You're
Still
muted.
on.
Okay, how's that?
There you go. Now you're
Sorry.
back. Now you're with
Sorry.
us.
So it's been 2 fun years. Actually, it has been fun because when I took this job, it was to look over the program and see what we could do to make it better. And that's kind of what we've been doing even throughout COVID. I'll start a little bit with high school, because I just spent the last 5 months at the high school cooking food, feeding kids, and setting up the new program. A week before school, I lost my assistant manager at the high school. She resigned, and so I had to hire somebody new. And in the interim, I was cooking and feeding 200 kids every day for lunch in a kitchen that I'd never worked in before, in a program that I had just set up that was brand new. So it was kind of interesting and exciting. Luckily, I found a dynamite assistant manager to hire, an awesome support person for her. And then I moved one of our seasoned employees up to support them, Mary Libby. So she's up there to be able to help now that I'm not there anymore. I'm back at South School. Some of the things that we did at the high school is we created a whole new menu to offer different stations for the students so that they could have different choices. We have a grab and go section, which has pre-made salads. We're making 30 salads every day. So a student can just come in, grab a salad. If they want an extra piece of fruit, they can grab that. They can grab their water and their milk, and they can just leave. They don't have to go through the whole line. And then there's also a sandwich section with parfaits every day. And then we have snack packs. So if somebody just wants something smaller to eat, they can grab that with some fruit and vegetables, and they're gone. Or they can go to the hot part where Teresa's making a hot entree every day, and sometimes a hot sandwich, a panini, just different things that the kids maybe aren't completely familiar with, but they're trying. The first time we ran the gobbler sandwich, which is just turkey, cranberry sauce, and stuffing, we sold like 3, and now we make 25. So the kids are really kind of coming in. Our participation is improved greatly. Lunch is up like about, they were at 146 before COVID, and yesterday they served 203 kids for lunch. So it's really taken off. Of course, it depends on what we have, on how many kids we get, but it's anywhere from 180 to 200. And so we're seeing a lot of faces. Breakfast, we're doing coffee, oatmeal, hot cocoa. Teresa's making homemade pastries in the morning. She's doing donuts, muffins, egg sandwiches, cinnamon rolls. We got Pop-Tarts. It's a whole breakfast cart. Kids are able to choose what they want. We have 2 breakfasts, one at 7 o'clock and one at 8:40, breakfast after the bell. Breakfast has increased about 30% over where they were before. Some days we're doing 100 kids for breakfast, which is amazing. So it's really nice to see. Teresa and Aaron have good energy. They're really friendly. They're concerned about how things look and how things taste that they're presenting. We have little signs now, so it kind of looks like a little deli section either at Circle K or at the Hannaford. It looks nice. We just got some new baskets today to put fruit in, and just, different things. So we're always looking at how can we make it better. I've put up new decals on the walls just for decoration and just to make it a little bit more exciting and a fun place. Part of my whole vision is that food should be fun and it should be interesting and there should be lots of choices, and it's a great way to communicate and have fun with your friends and relax in the middle of the day. So we want to try to make the servery in the dining room, real friendly, but it's difficult because with COVID, there's a lot of kids coming in at different times, and it's kind of crowded in the dining room. The dining room's really not big enough for putting even 70 or 80 kids in there. And we have 3 lunches. So we're looking at maybe, our participation has gone up, but there's a lot of kids that aren't eating lunch. So my next goal is to try to grab some of those kids, and also to grab some of the adults. Teachers come in to eat. I mean, they can get like a chef salad with a bread stick, and then they can get a piece of fruit and a milk or a water or both. So that's a good way to help our revenue a little bit. If we can get 15 teachers to come in and eat every day, then that's going to bring our participation up and also our revenue, which would be one of my targets next. We've also, so I talk about high school because that's kind of where I've spent the last 5 months. So that's kind of what my goal was to increase participation there, because it's easier to do, I think, because you can offer different things and different choices for the students. And it was also the program that had the least participation before I got here. We also have gotten, I had a ServSafe training. I had somebody come in and do that. My goal is to have everybody that's on board ServSafe certified with the management certificate. It costs us, money to do that, but it also helps us to have a better program with everybody being aware of what safety issues are. And it also looks really good when everybody can, across the board, be at the same level and have the same expertise. We're cross-training. At South School, we have a new kitchen manager, Tim. He came from the Somerset. He's a chef. He has a great eye for quality. He's always looking at the budget. He's looking at, making the menu more creative. Today they had baked apples for part of their lunch. It was a lot of work, but that's something that Tim does. He plans his days so that he has time to do those extra special things for the kids. So he's awesome about training, cross-training people so that we can move people from one school to the next when maybe somebody gets done, or maybe when somebody's out with COVID, or all those fun things. That's really helped a lot. Right now, we're over half of our staff has had COVID, so we're going on the downside. So hopefully, we're completely staffed at this point. We've hired some awesome people, which has been great. The staff has been amazing throughout this whole period too. It's really been helpful, knowing that those that are working are pitching in to make it work for everybody else. So some days you go into work and you say, hey, you need to go over to Cushing. Yep, okay, see ya, and they're more than happy to help out. So that's good. We also are getting a supply demand, I don't know, is it a subsidy called, I guess, or whatever, but extra money. That's what I call it. $31,000. It's a program that the state's giving us to purchase domestic products. It's because of the supply and demand. A lot of our prices are 25% to 30% higher than they were 2 years ago. Some things we can't get. Some things they're just not even making anymore. Some things you order and they send something else. So the staff's all working, with some of those challenges. So that $31,000 we can use between now and September of 2023. So that's going to definitely help our budget out a lot. The USDA PAL money, the entitlement for the commodities, there's I don't know, $1 million for the state of Maine, and it's going to be divided up amongst the different schools. We don't have a number yet of what that's going to be. I think they're coming out with that actually tomorrow. Our number last year was 56,000. And so this year, my guess is it's going to be 64,000. I don't know why I came up with that number, but last year I took some of the commodity money and I divided it out, and I did DOD, which is a fruit and vegetable program. It gives you money in a different pot, is basically what, instead of buying things to put in your freezer, which our freezer was overflowing, which Tim has done a great job of using that food and being able to, use up some of the stuff that's been there. So now we're just going to start that for the rest of this year, and we'll be just ordering fresh produce through this program to use that money instead of using the regular money that we have. And so that's $14,000 of purchases that we won't have in invoices between now and June. And then the new year for next year, which will be 23, that's the one that will be 60 or whatever. It'll be more than 56,000. So I'm going to divide that another way also, because there's another program you can do, which I don't think they've ever done here, but it's called a net off invoice. And it's where you buy something that uses a commodity, like pizza has commodity cheese on it, like Tyson Pizza or Rich's Pizza has commodity cheese on it. So when you buy a case of pizzas, you get $10 off, and that goes against this commodity, or NOI, it's called, net off invoice money. So I'm going to put some money in that pot because there are things we use anyway. That way we can diversify our menu for the things that the kids like. But so when we're buying chicken burgers, we'll be buying them at half price instead of full price, and our participation will increase because those are things that the kids really like. And so there's quite a few items that we actually will be able to buy through that program too. So between the three programs, I think if we distribute it out more, there's no sense in getting commodity food and then storing it in the freezer for 2 years. The whole idea is to use it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my plan is. We're pretty well full staffed. I go in circles, don't I, when I talk? But anyway, we're pretty well full staffed. We could use another part-time 4-hour type person. We don't have any substitutes. So sometimes when people are out, it's really difficult. With all the days that the hourly employees are allowed to, their personal days and everything, I could actually have 3 people out in one day. And that could be in one school. And I only have 6 people in the 2 bigger schools. So it really makes it difficult to have somebody. And when over at Thomaston, they got the middle school, she has to have at least three people. She has 7 people. She has to have at least 3 people on staff because she has 3 schools to serve lunch in. And she actually needs 4 to do it. But, there's so many people out all the time that sometimes that's really challenging. And it would be nice to also have somebody that's in a position to be able to train everybody. We need to come up with a succession plan because in the next 4 years, there's 6 people that can retire. And some of them are lead people. And so that's going to leave us with some big holes. And what my plan would be that we prepare for that by coming up with some training manuals. Like when I came in, there was 4 folders on my desk and that was it. And no idea how to get into the password on my new computer, So there would be a plan so that when the new people come on, they would have good support so that we can continue the programs that we're already doing. There's a lot of, when you first come on, there's a lot of different programs that have different rules and regulations, and it's a lot to learn and you're working. So, not only, you can cook the food, maybe you're a good cook, but if you don't know what the programs are, you can't do them correctly and, do the paperwork correctly and all of those things. So, and are you going to get somebody from another school that's going to want to come, if they have a job, they're probably going to stay at their job, so it's hard to get new people and good people. There's a lot of vacancies for directors right now. And so, you wonder I'm worried about in those 4 years, what's going to happen. And I want to be ready so that it can be a smooth transition. If they all got done at once, where would we be? That would be a really rough year. So I'd like to be more prepared to be able to, slide some people in. And when we hire, we're always looking at where that person can go and grow, to maybe go up the ladder a little bit and support us, years down the road instead. So let me see if I talked about everything. Oh, so some of the other fun things that we're going to try to do, hopefully now that COVID is hopefully on the downswing, is, at the high school in the spring, do some cookouts, get a barbecue grill and do some fun things up there. And maybe that's even something we could do at other schools if we had a portable grill that we could move around or something. I'm applying right now for a Vista member. It would be a 1-year position. And Pete, I did reread that. I'm not sure that this school has to pay anything for that person, but I'm not sure. If anything, it's the $6,500. And that person would be looking at participation and looking at what the barriers are for students coming to the cafeteria. Why do some kids not want to come to the cafeteria? Why are parents sending Lunchables to school for their kids when we're having Lunchables at school, or we're having chicken nuggets, or, they're not even looking at the menu to see we're having the same food that they'd be eating at home. And why are their kids bringing lunch every single day? And, knowing that if this person would also help to bridge that gap so that teaching families that if they encourage their children to eat at school, then they're going to have more discretionary funds at home to pay their light bill and to pay for their heat and their gas and things like that. So they would have, it would help with the poverty and the community, and help kids to realize that the meals at school are nutritious and healthy and fun. So that's kind of, did I cover everything, Pete?
Yeah, and good. I mean, and
Yeah.
just and food that people want to eat.
Right,
And
right.
part of what we've talked about in this group, and Darcy and I talk about it, and John and I talk about it, is how one of the metrics is how much participation do we have by staff?
Mhm.
To me, that's kind of a different outside metric that kind of indicates caliber of the food that's being served. But along those same lines, Darcy was talking about possibly, and this kind of early discussions on, is there a way that we could actually provide lunch to staff, teachers who eat in the lunchroom? She's seeing issues, behavior issues in
Oh, yeah.
lunchrooms that are hard to manage with an untrained staff.
Mhm.
So Darcy was thinking about, offering lunches, and then I kind of combined it with the idea of if we did it with, staff that actually had lunch in the classroom, in the lunchrooms with the students, could that help some of the behavior issues? And also, could that also encourage more staff to participate in our lunch program? Because I mean, the idea is to make sure that we have, good quality, nutritious food for students, but that would also, transfer over to staff too. So that's something that we discussed. The cost of that was really just the cost of food, because the labor is already paid for. And for us, the cost of food for a lunch is probably about $2, according to Darcy. So really, it could be a win-win for us in terms of behavior. It could be a win-win getting staff fed. It could be a win. There was one more win there. I'll think of it. So that was another idea. But also to help. Sorry, Maria. Let me just.
I maybe you'll remember what that other benefit is, but I just had a suggestion with the parents. Maybe I'm sure you have at the high school or the middle school, especially, you've got opportunities for parents to come into the school for some function. And that might be an opportunity to showcase the various types of foods that you have at the cafeteria, so that parents have an opportunity to maybe to sample the various menu items that you do prepare for the students at lunchtime, and, become more comfortable that the food that is served is nutritious and good tasting. Just an idea.
Nice.
Yeah,
And one
yeah,
of
kind of
one of the
sample,
things that I was looking at was on open house next fall. Definitely want to try to do something so that parents, because with COVID, we really haven't been able to have parents coming in all the time. So definitely would want to do that.
That would be a good time to showcase, kind of like I was thinking about when, I took my kids to college, parents' weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, cafeteria really just went all out with the various types of foods that they prepare on a daily basis. So the parents knew that their kids were eating decent stuff and, stuff that they would like. So anyway, did you remember what you forgot?
No, but I do remember, and this pertains to Darcy too, because she was, I found Darcy, or I first met Darcy 4 years ago when she was the food service director up at the Maine School of Science and Math, where my son was, and I was impressed with her then. But I know my son and all the kids would say that the food was never as good as it was on Parents' Day.
Yeah. It always was, Pete. It always was as good. It was just a little fancier.
Yeah.
Like holiday dinner,
Yeah.
graduation. Those were good meals too.
But something that Darcy's also wanted to really focus on is how can we, and this kind of pertains to a conversation that we were having yesterday, how can we really appreciate for her kitchen staff? How can we show appreciation in a non-monetary way to her staff? And I think part of it she's already doing. I think part of it is training. I think having a trained staff is really important. The Serve Safe training is something that I didn't understand until I did the back office for Cappy's back here in Camden, and realizing that it's just when you put plastic wrap on top of food, it matters whether the food's hot or cold. There are things that are really important that I think that this makes the staff, I think, better at their job and more job satisfaction.
I have an idea. It's not non-monetary, but it's very low cost. Could you do something like movie tickets? Somebody does a really nice job doing something, give that person a pair of movie tickets, something like that. It's not costly, but it's it's some form of recognition for that individual and their, good effort or what they've done. So small.
And I know Darcy pays out of her pocket a lot of times, but that she just feels strongly enough that she does that with her staff already. But I think that we
and the way I'm sorry, Pete.
Go
The
ahead.
way I look at it is every one of my, I do not have, at this point, I can say, I do not have one person who doesn't deserve something to show how much they're doing. I don't have 2 or 3 standouts that, oh, you did a good job, you did a good job. I have every one of my staff, and I've never worked anywhere where I've been able to say this, that all are going above and beyond every day.
Well, then let your employees nominate that person, maybe do a monthly thing. And if you want to make it non-monetary, maybe it could just be, a couple of hours off,
Well, that might cost more.
Yeah, right, it might.
All right, back to
Right.
movie tickets.
We did over Christmas, last year, the last few days of school, we did a like a Wheel of Fortune game I made up or whatever. And every day somebody got to pick a letter and put it in the thing or whatever. And I don't even think we had a prize. I think the prize was just that you won, but it was fun and they really enjoyed that. But, I really think some people don't realize that a lot of times food service they're the last on the totem pole.
Yeah,
You know,
they are.
the teachers think that they're too good to wipe tables. They're too, whatever. The ed techs come in and they're supposed to be monitoring the dining room and they're ignoring the kids. And I hear them in my office and get up and go out and speak to them. And the ed tech is just, getting up at that point, and we're the last one to find out, that they've changed the lunch times in the school. We're the last ones to find out, that they're going to use our cafeteria after school for some function or what have you. And, we're the last one to see that our whiteboard's missing because they came in and took it because, oh, well, they can use it.
Is there a
No.
way to think about some of those staff appreciation not being just within the department, but being from the whole school?
Like
So, like-
from the principal's office.
Right, from the principal's office or from the
Right.
teachers or even from the students?
That would be amazing. When I sent a thing to principals last year, there was in March or sometime, there's a food service staff appreciation day or something. And I sent a thing to all the principals, and the middle school was the only school that did anything for the staff.
That's
So-
interesting. It does sound like it's a little too siloed than the schools.
I'd like to go back to one thing you said, Darcy, and that was about the barbecues.
Hmm.
So in a former district I worked in, we used to do those, and we sometimes do them for students, sometimes for staff, sometimes for parents. And the superintendent and assistant superintendent would help out and serve. And I'll actually make the offer right now that if you do that, I will show up and help you serve.
Nice. Come by anytime. That's one of the comments is, oh, we never see anybody. They never see anybody.
Yeah.
They'd love to see people.
Maybe
Come
I
in and
can,
say hello.
if you
All of you,
train,
come in,
if you
come
train,
have
me-
lunch.
you train me, I'll pull a Pender Macon and come help serve in the line.
You can serve.
Yep.
You don't even need to wear a hairnet, John.
Now, you've gone too far.
when
That's
when I was at where was I? Unity College. Everybody would come and serve on special occasions, and the staff was dying to come. They were like wanted to be on the list. And of course, at MSSM, the staff was in the kitchen doing dishes whenever you needed them to. So, students helping out. Well, I'll just tell you this, okay? When I asked for help, when I was by myself at the high school, feeding everybody by myself, and I asked for help, sorry, we're too busy. Everybody's got their own thing they have to be doing. That was the answer I got.
Do you have any sense of what makes those cultures so different?
Yep.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot here.
No,
But I
I'll tell you,
appreciate-
leadership.
Okay,
Leadership.
okay.
It comes, comes on down or whatever. And I just think if I'm asking this principal for assistance and he's not giving it, the teacher's not going to step in. and we're discussing this about the kids' behavior today because I was at the high school, and what you expect is what, if you expect 10, you get 8. If you expect 5, you get 3. So what you expect and what you do, when I'm flipping hamburgers or I'm doing dishes or I'm doing whatever, then my staff's going to do that. But if nobody else is doing anything, when the principal's in the cafeteria and he's not, talking to kids who are misbehaving, then, what's the ed tech doing?
So I'm hearing a lot about silos and accountability. And I'm also hearing, I'm just thinking, running through the challenges through my head, because you did such a lovely job of sharing. I really appreciated just hearing how you're working through a lot of the logistics and systemic issues. And we can see that in the numbers and the budget. It's really, the work is showing. So now I'm thinking through challenges. So silos and accountability. The staffing and succession plans, do you feel like there's anything that you need in order to make that happen? Or is it just really starting to be aware of it and putting the people in place as you come up on retirements and so forth?
Yeah, I think we need to be starting right now to put some people in place that are gonna be building that structure. So
Do you
that
feel
we'll
like
be-
that's new staff or do you have the existing resources to do that?
Well, I think I need more time. I mean, more, a position, if you will, or more, I don't know what you want to call it, but someone who has a job now isn't going to be able to add that onto their plate.
Okay.
I think that they're going to
But
be able
setting,
to.
it's what Darcy's doing is setting the example too. So she's setting the example of leadership and hiring people that are willing to step up, step over, step down, and do whatever they have to do to get jobs done, fill in when they have to. And so with current staff or past staff, when they didn't see that, they didn't really know that was something that was expected or that could actually be beneficial to the team. Like now that the staff is seeing the cross training, the director stepping into a role when there's an opening, having kind of a high, very skilled manager like Tim, setting examples and stepping in. I think you set the bar higher. And so I think we may find that there's staff that we do have on staff now that they could actually step up and be part of the succession plan. But I think we also need to continue to look and hire. I say it, I look for people that are better than me. I look for people that have skills that can replace me.
Right.
And it needs, you kind of have to have a personality that allows you to do that. Not everybody can hire people that want their job, but that's partly what it is.
Yeah.
So I think I think Darcy can do that. I know that she has hired people that could step into her role if she decided that she wants to retire or go half time or whatever she's thinking. There are people there that could, with some training, step up. Not that I want her to, because she's a director that is really a director. She really gets the big picture, gets the vision, gets the paperwork, gets the federal regulation side of this whole job, which is exhausting. Because I kind of had to, when we did between directors, I had to kind of do a lot of that, and I didn't do a very good job.
So yeah, I feel like the capacity is there to find people. Darcy, do you feel like the staff numbers are right? Or because we're also starting to move into budget season. So I'm thinking like, what are we looking at needing to add? You mentioned a 4-hour person. Are you thinking that we need to be looking at hiring more staff over the next few years? Or do you think of just replacing our existing staff?
I think we need to be looking at increasing. Because also this is at the end of June will be the well, we don't know what's going to happen by the end of June, but at this point, the program we're in right now is going to end, and we have a waiver right now to send home breakfast. And so next fall, we won't have that waiver, and we'll be going back to the National School Lunch Program without the SSO, the seamless summer option added to it. Bah. And, so that means that students will be eating in the dining rooms,
Ooh.
and in the grammar schools, I understand that they had breakfast in the classroom, which we can do that, but you still have to, it'll be in the morning. So that makes a difference, because now you've got to have somebody go in the morning. And one of the other things is the high school decided to change their lunchtime until 1:12. My people work until 1:30.
Ooh. So they don't
Yeah.
have time to clean up afterwards.
Wow, that one came quick. Amazing how fast you picked up on that. Yeah. Wow. Nobody else thought of that at all.
Yeah.
And so now, when you got 6 o'clock, somebody has to be in at 6 to make breakfast for 7.
Yeah.
So, okay, I only had 2 people. So it's like, what do how do we make this work? You don't, so that's sometimes why you need to have an extra person. In South School's lunch, we have 3 lunches now, and it's longer. And so you have to have somebody stay later to clean up. And we do the after school program too. So those things all come into play on how many people you need. Even if you have 5 people that come in at 7 o'clock, well, if they can't, their hours don't go until later. And I think my management team needs to have more hours to do their job.
And
That's
that's
the
where I think
biggest-
some of those hours are going to come from. I think not only is it going to be from expanding the hours, because we're serving from 6, or they're working from 6 in the morning until the after school program is 6 at night.
Yeah.
So we have that, either snack or dinner that we're serving. We're going to be going year round with summer programs. So it's not only longer days during the school year, it's going to be a longer year. So we're going to have a natural expansion of hours that way. But also, as we really kind of push for professional development and training, we're going to need one of the management team to step up and be a trainer, and be kind of a trainer supervisor. That's going to, take away some of the kitchen time that manager might have, so they can train and supervise other staff. And so I think that's where the expansion of the program will be. And it may not be new bodies in there, but it might just be the expansion of the hours, which isn't a bad thing either, because the benefits are already paid for. So it's really just paying for the hours, not for a full
Right.
staff. So it'd be nice to offer, more full-time jobs to school year employees, whether it be 11 months, or instead of 175 days, maybe it's 190 days, but and maybe it's 8 hours instead of 6 hours, or 5.5.
So from a finance perspective, Darcy, how do you see, I realize there's a lot of uncertainty, so you may not be able to answer this question, but how do you see the changing payment structures coming from the state and the feds alongside increasing these hours? Do you think that we're going to need to be putting more money in from the tax base, or do you think you're going to be able to manage that within our existing programming dollars, within the enterprise fund part of it?
Well, I think there's always going to have to be subsidy from the town, because you're never going to cover your labor at all. Your food, as you increase your participation, it pretty much pays for itself, but you don't, sorry, it's telling me I have my meeting. Oh, that's the boys' game. That's the boys' game. And so, I think it's just I don't think you're gonna, an hour is $15 plus, but you're already paying their benefits. So, that's 7 more meals in an hour, that you gotta get somewhere or whatever. And I think there are ways to do that, in different places. I just think with the management people, they've got to have time to do their paperwork and do it correctly. I've been audited like 4 times, these different programs that we're doing and everything, and everyone's an audit. And we're going to get audited in February for the tick sheets that they do or whatever. And we had to cancel the audit because nothing was in line. Nothing, I was at the high school and I wasn't paying attention. And so she was really nice. I said to her, look, there's no way we can. And she said, well, we don't want you to fail. We'll wait and do it next month, which I was like, oh, thank you. But I mean, I've got to be on top of those things. I have to have the time to do that. And the managers have to have the time to do the work and do what they need to do,
So
We've got-
maintaining the current subsidy then, but not necessarily increasing it or decreasing it.
This subsidy is going to change. We're on the SSO right now, which is the summer rate. And the summer rate will end the 1st of July.
Oh, I meant the town subsidy.
Oh, that's, yeah.
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 So
What is the current town subsidy?
300, 400?
300,000.
Okay. And next year, do we anticipate that going up?
No,
Now,
So,
and at this point in time, all of the meals are free, essentially, right?
correct. Yes.
they're free to the student.
Free, end product is free, okay? Not free to us. So the bottom line is, are we going to be losing subsidies for next year?
No. The way it will go is help me if I'm not wrong, Peter, but the federal government is going to subsidize the free and reduced the way they did before. And anything that's left over from the reduced and the paid students are going to be paid by the state.
Right. At
Okay.
the free rate. So we're gonna get the free rate for all of our meals,
rate,
whether it's
right.
paid by the feds or the state.
Right.
But the
State-
free rate
state-
doesn't cover our full costs.
The free rate doesn't cover our full cost under the National School Lunch Program, nor does it cover our full cost under the SSO program. But the SSO program compensates us more. I mean, for food service and restaurants in general, there's 2 major costs, food and labor. And if for our purposes, labor is a fixed cost and food's the variable. And actually, for any business, the rule of thumb is if you can cover your variable costs, you should stay in business. So we can right now, under the SSO program, cover our variable costs and cover a substantial portion of our fixed costs, our labor. We're not going to be able to do that as well under the National School Lunch Program. But because we know that there's not a direct relationship between the exact number of meals and the number of staff that we have, there's actually a capacity that each staff member kind of carries. Darcy rule of thumb is like 100 meals per staff member, I think. So there's a capacity there. So between 601 and 700, you have got the same number of staff members in a very simple example. So if we can maximize our capacity and increase our numbers, then there's a chance that we'll be able to continue to manage with the subsidy that we're already raising and not have to raise it. We've
Okay.
been pretty good over the last 5 years. I think 4 years, maybe. Once we actually kind of identify that 300,000 is that number that tends to allow us to break even. Some years, not so much, but some years, I think overall, over the course of the time, it's been a fairly, good break-even point. Whereas this year, because of the SSO, we'll actually probably have a positive fund balance at the end of the year, which will allow us some opportunities for maybe investing in some of our kitchen equipment in some of our schools, possibly allow us to work with our legal and talk about the balances of our student and faculty accounts that have been
Yes.
kind of stagnant for the last 4 or 5 years. Do something with that.
When you say that we'll have a balance fund, is that including the subsidy?
Yes,
So we'll have more, counting the subsidy, we'll have more funds coming into the program than we're spending.
correct. The forecast is somewhere around between 120, $130,000 is my guess that the fund balance will be. If
And
we
but
were,
but we're still putting $300,000 in from the towns.
yes, we've raised that for the town. The town we've raised that in a separate article, and that's being raised no matter what.
Okay, but we don't have a fund balance per se. We still have taxpayer money going into the project.
Yeah.
Into the thing. Okay.
All right, the last question. Oh, go ahead, Dave. I didn't really see you.
No, it's a different. John, you guys talked about staffing. Are you fully staffed at this point in time? To what is the available, what you have?
We're at 18. That's
how
where
many-
we were before.
How many do you have budgeted?
It's at 18.
We're fully staffed. It's not 18 full-time equivalents because a lot of those staff are less than full-time.
Yeah.
No, I just was, but you have an employee for every position, essentially, whether it's full-time or part-time. And has your staffing been consistent over the year, or have you had some turnover or anything like that?
I've had like 4 new people come on this fall.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And the last question I had is, in the past, because of the way the federal programs worked, we really needed to get forms for free and reduced lunches. Is that going to start being a problem again next year, or is that finally done?
No, it's still going to be there. It's still going to be there. And the sad part is that they're trying to get everybody to fill out the free and reduced lunch, the more people that fill out the free people and the reduced people are always going to fill them out because they need that. The other people who don't need it, the paid people, we're encouraging everybody fill it out, everybody fill it out. The more of the paid people who fill it out, it makes your percentage go down.
And is that a good thing or not?
No,
Good
if it's not filled out, that counts as a paid person.
It does?
Yeah. So we need them filled out because some of those paid people really aren't paid people. So this is my thought today about that on the way home. I'm thinking now that the state starting next year has skin in the game, because remember, they're making it up now.
Yeah.
They've got to make up the difference. They actually have a concerted effort for us to maximize our federal money because they have to make up the difference between the total cost of meals at that rate and the federal subsidy. And part of the statute requires that we maximize our federal dollars through the program. So I'm wondering if they might have some new approaches finally about how to get some of these forms filled out, because that's been a problem and the state has not been helpful in a tangible way to help us get those filled out. And we all know that affects our other grants as well.
They think they are helping.
Right.
They had this big study done last summer about, everything, and it was just the same results that they had before. So it's really difficult to get people. And then part of the thing too is they fill it out online, and all that does is give me the application. It doesn't put it into the computer. So I still have to put it in the computer. And then they have a missing piece on their application, and you have to discredit the application, or you have to track them down and try to get them to fill out the application correctly. And, it takes a lot of time.
And we have to use their system.
Yeah, the
Pardon me?
program is very biased against actually qualifying an individual for free and reduced. It's frustrating for every district in the state is frustrated with the process.
All right. So are there any other questions that people have? Or Darcy, was there anything else that you wanted to follow up on?
I think that's it.
I just also want to add the social part of what you do. I mean, I assume that participation rate for students in elementary school is like 100%.
No,
What percentage for elementary?
60 at South.
So kids are then not eating, or they have their own lunch and they're out?
Well, some kids are bringing their lunches, but we also offer this. If a child brings their own lunch, they can't get a free milk, but they can get a milk with a fruit and a grain. So we call it a snack pack, or a cold pack is what we call it. And so we're counting them when we get credit for that as
All right.
as a meal. And so they're included in that 60%.
Are they all in the room though?
Yep. Kids who
Okay.
bring their own lunch are in the room.
Middle school, I assume they're all in the room. I don't know the
Yeah.
percentage, right?
I am not sure. I don't spend a lot of time up there.
Maybe 50 or 60% also.
I haven't looked at all of those numbers. Like at the high school, it's 36%.
Right. And I just want to say about high school age kids is like, I think both my kids never spent any time in the cafeteria because I always wanted to be in someone's classroom. They like being in someone's classroom for lunch in a small group. It was the social part.
Yeah, yeah.
It just changes when you're that age as to
Oh,
whether
yeah.
you want to be in the room. And if you're in the
Yeah.
room, you bring your own food or buy it.
Right,
You know, so
right.
we all need to know that. And as we look at it numbers, there's this big social part of it too, as well as comfort level of eating
Right.
someone else's food versus what's in your pail or bucket
Right.
bag.
And they are eating in different areas at the high school right now, but also this all comes down to everybody being on the same page. And I know it's because of COVID this year for sure, but seniors are allowed off campus at lunchtime and juniors are also if their grades are good. So there goes how many of my kids already, 150, 200 kids aren't even available to eat. So
I know, but we do have to meet them where they're at, and if
Right.
they're,
But we're
they're
we're
at that
serving
age,
we're serving same thing they're serving up at the corner,
yeah, I know.
you know.
So
So
it sounds
let's
like
make it
the grab, yeah, it sounds like the grab and go is a good way to
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
sort of accommodate both the social needs as well as the
Yeah.
district needs.
And this year, because of COVID, they're able to eat like in different groups in different places. So I'm going to try to search out where those places are to try to push some food there.
Market research.
You're a pusher. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've definitely done a lot, and you've definitely, I mean, you started like, I think the week before COVID hit,
Yeah,
or
kind of.
the day before, or something crazy.
Yeah.
So you've definitely had some challenges, and I really like a lot of the things that I'm hearing. So thank you for sharing. I'm glad we had a chance to have like this fuller picture of the program now that you're more settled in the program.
Stop by.
All right.
When COVID clears, we will.
All right.
Thanks, Darcy.
I want some of those donuts.
Yeah. Oh, they're awesome.
All right. So I think we're all done. So Darcy, you're welcome to stay, of course, but you're
All right.
also welcome to head
Thanks.
out and have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right. So the next item on the agenda, we've been talking about the draft policy for budget transfers, and Pete and John and I talked a little bit about it, and Maria and Dave and I have had an email exchange about it. For our audience of probably 5, the context here is we're thinking about working on some policies to clarify internal transfers, which are transfers within articles. So when we budget in one way, but we end up spending money in different ways. And we're trying to figure out how to thread the needle between information that the board needs to know or the finance committee needs to know. I'm not really distinguishing when I say board or committee. We're trying to distinguish between that and what would just be unnecessary information. So an example would be, for instance, our special ed programming. We've talked a lot about ways that we can make sure that we're aware of any changes, like if a new student moves in and we have some increased costs around that. This policy would be one way to address issues like that. And what we're trying to do is figure out how to articulate that in a policy so that we strike the right balance, or at least come close to it the first time around so we can amend it later. So Pete, do you want to sort of start talking a little bit about some of the things we were talking about some examples of something we wouldn't want to capture. If you want to share some of those examples, and maybe we can then just start thinking about how do we frame this in a way that is helpful and not overburdensome on staff as well.
Sure. So the term that I use, and is an accounting term, is decision useful. And is the information that we're sharing, does it help the board make a decision in the future? So right now, we had budgeted about $50,000 for under student vehicles. So we didn't know whether it would be a bus, a van, a wagon. But as it turns out, it's going to be bus. We're actually going to, we got approved for 2 buses, and we'll be spending that money on a lease payment for a bus coming the end of the year. So I'm going to transfer that payment, that estimated payment, about $42,000 from student vehicles to a bus payment. Really doesn't help the board make any future decision. It's pretty much the same thing in terms of your perspective. If a student, if we have budgeted a $80,000 for a speech therapist, and we can't hire one, and instead we contract out with a contracted speech therapist, that would be a $80,000 change from staffing to contracted services. That seems like it might be inappropriate to at least inform the committee that that transfer is happening within the article. It's happening in this case within the program itself under speech. Sometimes we have to move money from PT to OT. Again, that seems to be, it's still under the same article, but maybe it's decision useful for you for budgeting purposes. Anytime we actually have to move money from article to article, the board is going to have to make that approval anyway. And so we'll certainly inform you that we're going to have to spend an extra $25,000 out of Article 1, General Education, because we have a 504 expenditure that was unanticipated. So an accommodation for a student, not special ed, comes under the Article 1, General Education. And we're gonna have to locate, John and I would have to locate where that money is gonna come from. Generally, that would come from probably a special ed type article that we'd move over. So eventually we would inform you of the change. And then if that article went over, we'd have to have the board vote to move the budget money from one to the other within the parameters of the statute that allows that.
So for the first paragraph, that's really what you're talking about in the first paragraph. So the policy, the procedures that we have sort of suggested in this template policy, does that sounds like what you're talking about? So that there we're all good, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So for the second paragraph, did you have any? And I didn't suggest that I was going to ask this question, so you may not be prepared for it, Pete. But I was wondering if you had any sort of language you wanted us to think about for the second piece. Because staffing may be too broad, but I think staffing is one place where we're trying to capture in the internal transfer policy. And I'm trying to think, what are some other things? Like some supply costs are probably not useful, but there might be some supply costs if we're having like really high supply costs at one school that we didn't budget for. That actually could be decision useful information. But again, it's hard to figure out how do we actually thread that needle to avoid having you tell us every time you buy an extra desk at the middle school.
And the way we budget, we don't budget for every single expected need. We budget kind of, if it is for replacement furniture, we don't budget it per building. When John and I go through the number, we do a cross section and kind of allocate it per building, but then spend it where it's necessary. It just, some buildings spend more in one year and not the next. So that wouldn't be I wouldn't even want to try to notify you on that. If we're buying extra fireproof, file cabinets at TGS this year, but the money's coming from the different schools that we budgeted kind of, based on student count.
So what?
Also, in that, oh, go ahead, Maria.
No, so based on everything you've said so far, so when would it be decision appropriate to be aware of line item transfers within an article?
That's what I think it's going to be, have to be kind of a dollar amount. I think if it's going to be, $50,000 or something substantial, it's going to have to be.
Well, that's, that was the point that I tried to make, is I'm not aware, being all new to this, I don't know what is, what the number is or what the percentage is, et cetera. And then something that I mentioned in the email to Chelsea is, what about if there's a pattern of transfers? So you end up with a whole bunch of transfers from line item to line item within an article. Like, wouldn't you want to know if you had, or wouldn't we want to know if all of a sudden we saw 30 or 40 or 50 transfers in the space of a couple months?
So to me, that could be.
I don't know if that's normal or not. So, I'm
we wouldn't be doing the budget transfers. We would just be spending down the line. So I don't code my expenditures based on where the money's budgeted.
Uh-huh.
I don't use my book money to buy pencils if I'm really buying books.
Okay.
Or pencils. I code them where they're supposed to be coded, so that the actual number will represent what we're actually purchasing. And that's when you'll start seeing the budget to actual numbers kind of start deviating. If you see a deviation from, a budgeted number to an actual number, that's where you're going to see some of those potential budget transfers. The second I make that budget transfer, that's hidden. You won't see that anymore.
Mhm.
It'll all look peachy keen that this is perfect. But what's more important?
But the budget transfer is reported, right?
And then,
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just commenting, the budget transfer is reported, right?
If we actually did a budget transfer for every single time, but that's I do budget transfers when when it's basically when it's something substantive. When our special ed director tells me that we can't hire this individual person, I'm going to have to contract it out. And that's when I do a budget transfer, and that's when I would notify the board that I'm
Okay.
doing that within the article. But again, that's usually, it's more for information only.
Mhm. So what do you
And
suggest then, Peter? What do you suggest be the percentage or the dollar amount? You said $50,000.
Does that seem too high?
I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, I don't know what is reasonable or unreasonable. I just threw a number in there just to put
Yeah.
something in there, kind of
And I
like.
don't have that in front of me
Yeah,
right
that's
now,
why
but
this conversation I think is really helpful, because I think we do need to figure out a little bit more. One thing that I'm thinking about is an example where we hired a staff member and they had more experience, and it was a non-aligned staff member. So they came in at like $25,000 to $30,000, but we didn't approve that on a board level. So because the money was just sort of rearranged within the internal transfers. So that's where I feel like staffing is one of the big places where we do need stuff. but I don't, so I think 50,000 isn't necessarily going to capture, a number doesn't seem like it captures staffing issues. Issues isn't the right word, but staffing. Staffing, yes, we don't need to make it an adjective. So I think that we still need to be, I don't want to have a really small number, but I don't want to have a really large number either if we're going to miss some of, I think one of the big reasons for this is to sort of think about costs that get decided outside of the budget season that end up having budget impacts over future years. So a staffing issue, when we spend money on a staff person, that then raises our budget in a future year.
Question is, how many times do we actually do this in a year? If we do it 10 times a year, it doesn't matter what the number is. It should be whatever time you do it. If we're doing it 300 times a year, it's a different story. So how many times a year do you do the transfers?
3 or 4.
So it doesn't matter what the number is.
They're very minor. You know, for Chelsea's example, if all of a sudden we're hiring an administrator mid-year, you know, that administrator's notification would go to the board.
Well, this one didn't come to the board, so I think that's one place
Well,
where we don't
I
always.
can't talk about specific issues. I'm just saying.
Well,
in
yeah,
general,
I'm trying to be vague there, but
I'd say that a new hire would come to the board. You know, it could be requested that be discussed in executive session, and then those questions could be asked, and the implications of future years could be sought out by the board at that point.
My point is, it doesn't matter if you're doing 3 or 4 transfers a year. It doesn't matter what the amount, the dollar amount is. You should just tell us about all of them because it's trivial. Because it's not going to take that much time. It's not going to be that much of a, and it's,
Yeah.
But if you have to do it 15 or 30 or 40 times a year, it's a different story.
But I don't have to do a budget transfer ever. It's really, to me, the budget transfer sometimes takes away from the reporting value mid-year of the financials, because the difference is all of a sudden missing now. If I move money from one area to another and tell you about it, how's that information retained?
Well, you have the original budget, and it should be the original budget should say how much is in the line item, and the new budget should say what's in the line item. So you're going to have that retained through both line items in the budget.
Okay.
Is that right?
But when do you, so this goes, when do you want me, when's it going to be useful for you to have me actually do a transfer so that I have an amended budget and an original budget?
maybe the issue isn't transfers. Maybe the issue is simply having some kind of mechanism that triggers, and that might be where the percentage that Maria suggested works, a mechanism that triggers when certain categories are spent more than we anticipated. The problem is that sometimes that may reflect trivial information, but the issue is really to be aware of places where we've budgeted for one type of item and we're spending it on another type, because that information, I would call that decision useful because it helps us understand what we should be budgeting for in future years and why we're budgeting for it. So that when we get the request, we're able, I'm just thinking back to Eileen King's workshop where she really said, the board needs that kind of information to be able to make informed decisions. So that's what we're trying to, the needle we're trying to thread is really places where there's going to be long-term budget impacts.
So
Get burdensome for you, Peter.
no, it's
What'd
not.
you say?
No, it's not. No, I'm just trying to think of how. So on the summary report that I put out every month, the 2-sheeter that
Yep.
goes kind of by department. And I guess I'm not asking, I don't think we can do this tonight, but maybe if we're seeing money, or if we see the need, or if we see one of these categories, health, extracurricular, guidance, whatever it is, either over or under, I guess in this case, really overspent by some amount,
Mhm.
maybe that should trigger us to have a discussion and make a budget transfer together, or identify what that difference is. I mean, it's really the point of these financials is to kind of have more sets of eyes looking at them and question, okay, what's going on in Cushing administration? That's at 60.7, but Ash Point's only at 59.4. Bad example, too close, but
Yeah.
That was
Well,
my
go
second-
down to, well, no, that one doesn't work. Well, this one is an easy explanation, but if they are the debt at 82%, I mean, that's because of the way we pay it. But if the debt were at 82% in October, then that's useful information. I guess though, does this capture, I think the challenge with using it this way is that a lot of times this is a lagging indicator. Because depending on when the change happens, it may not actually get triggered until later in the year, where it would start going over the percentage that we budgeted.
well, hopefully, we look at that, like the number at the top of the page at 61.54. To me, that's at least a number that most of these numbers should trend towards, because that's payroll.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
I
I
don't
think,
know. I'm not sure I have an answer right now. I'm not sure I really have a.
well, here's what I think, Pete, you're on the right track, at least in suggesting that let's start looking through our numbers. I don't know that this data sheet gives us an answer, but we are about to go into budget season, which means we're going to be looking at the budget much more specifically. So maybe what we can do is, if people are open to this, is look through budget and sort of try to figure out where these places might be. What are some places that we're making decisions on the budget this year that we would want to know if any changes happened? And that might give us some clarity around what specifically we want to add to this policy.
And I do send the line item year to date as well, I think.
Yeah. You did, yeah.
Okay. I don't really encourage us to go through every single line item at this meeting, but I certainly would encourage you to go through it and either pick an article one month or something.
The last time I did that, you complained.
But I fixed it all. But I had a list and I fixed it. And I think that
And we-
those things, they're useful to me. I may complain, but whatever, get over it.
But yeah, I mean, that is one thing that I did want us to actually do, and we sort of got away from it because we got caught up with other stuff. Lauren, you were going to say something.
It's just like it's 6:18 and I don't know what else you want to do, Chelsea, but it's the pumpkin, the coach is going to turn into a pumpkin at some point here. So a lot
right.
left to.
Well, the good news is it sounds like some of what we are planning to talk about, we're also talking about in the workshop. So we don't necessarily need to duplicate some of those things.
Okay, that's we were wondering about that. That's fine. I'll be prepared to do more at the workshop because of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Feel free to shoot me a
Okay.
text and ask me these questions, because I felt a little out of the loop when I saw the workshop, and I was like, wait, aren't we doing this in
I know,
finance
well,
facilities? So yeah, so let's if it's relevant to finance and facilities, let's loop the chair into those conversations.
Okay.
Okay, so Lauren's right. Let's Dave and Maria, how do you guys feel about sort of tabling this until after budget season, when we have some more clarity, or we've gone through a budget process and we can really think about some of these items in more detail?
Fine with me.
Okay,
We're
Okay.
the
Yeah.
expert.
maybe we
Well, and
can
it's
through the-
challenging because I know there's we want to capture this in some way, but it is really challenging to figure out how do we actually articulate it in a policy. So yeah, I don't have any good answers either, but I think this was a good conversation to start thinking about what are the kinds of questions we need to be asking.
I actually think we can move forward with the first policy,
That's true. Yeah.
the article transfer policy. I think that's pretty clear cut, don't you?
That's true. And that is something that we're following statute, but it would be good to have it in our policies so that we know that we need to follow it. So in that case, why don't I shoot the first part of the policy to Mark? And that way they can take a look at it and do any kind of like making it any kind of policy stuff that they want to do and figure out like, should it be in an existing policy? So I will shoot that part to Mark unless there are any objections.
None.
Okay. All right. Shoot that part to Mark. All right. Good call. Okay. All right. So now let's actually take a look at the agenda. Pete, what do we want to start tossing?
Well, there's really that, I mean, I wanted to give Darcy the time that she
Right.
deserved. No
Property and
concerns about
casualty.
year to date. So for me, I've got no concerns about year to date for general fund. We're in a good place. It's a little bit, it's every month it gets more solid.
You've got a
The school nutrition, we've gone over that. What's that, Dave?
couple of items that are like 500% of their line item. But other than that, I mean,
Wait, where?
I was looking through it. There was one or two that were pretty high up. So it's hard for me to see on this computer. So
Was that on the longer one or the summary?
it was
The
on,
two
the-
page?
I think it was on the budget to actual by article.
The longer one?
Yeah. But I mean, I sort of expect those things, but I said there was a couple that were quite a bit over budget, but they didn't stand out as being particularly worrisome.
Yeah, sometimes you can tell and sometimes it's worth asking questions, but that is one place where I am happy to spend 10 minutes in a meeting, making sure that we have time to ask those questions so that we don't have to schedule time outside of meetings for those of us who really don't have time outside of meetings.
Example, I just opened up the larger spreadsheet and this one is called State Subsidy K through 12 Cushing, 271% spent year to date. So that's like one probably, and it's not insignificant. Well, I don't know. Looks like it's not a huge amount of money. Anyway,
Here's a good example actually of something that, in terms of an example of like places where we're spending differently than we budgeted, subs. That's the kind of place where for whether it's an internal transfer or something else, whatever our second policy is, that's a kind of place where if that's happening across the board, it'd be good to have a report on.
I just looked real quick. There's over budget on substitutes like 400%, 400 and something.
Yeah, and some of those things, we need to look at cross sections of that whole budget to actual.
Yeah, I'm just looking at quick,
Yeah.
quick peruse. Anyway, okay.
There was one that I really thought it was interesting. There were a couple of them that were actually negative on their numbers. They actually gained money instead of losing money.
And that's one place where I think that there's some movement going around that we don't necessarily need to know about, because sometimes that's just, we spent it out of it. Sometimes the budget numbers, this is why when we get to the later conversation about budget cross sections, sometimes, for instance, we buy a software program like iReady. One of the warrants I signed recently was $100,000 for Curriculum Associates. And iReady is a program that we pay for in $100,000, but we divvy it up in each of the schools that use it. So sometimes those numbers change a little bit because we're not really assigning it in the budget category in the way we're spending it. So I think that's one thing that I want to talk about, at least with cross sections, is really getting a sense of what do these what do these things actually cost us and what are we actually spending money on? So is there anything else people want to look at with this article summary, actual budget to actual?
No.
Okay, well, here's what we can definitely do. I am perfectly happy to spend 10 minutes, as I said, in every meeting to go over things. So if you do want to bring specific line items to the meeting, we can ask questions about them. And again, that may help us understand this internal transfer piece a little bit better as well.
Before we adjourn, just real quick.
Oh, no, we still have more on the agenda. We're not adjourning. We still have 5 more minutes. I'm going to take every second. So go ahead.
No, I wanted to make sure that Pete talked a little bit about what he intended with the property and casualty insurance item.
So right now, there's actually training by MSMA is having training on that process next Wednesday that they haven't set the time, but sometime in the afternoon that both Jen and I are going to take. But in the interim, I've already reached out to 2 companies that have reached out in the past and wanted to participate. So the Allen Agency and Cross Insurance, as well as MSMA, all have the information they need to actually bid on the whole package. And then they may also bid on our workers' comp policy as well.
So this is for the buildings, for the insurance for the vehicles.
It's vehicles, it's all property, liability, board policy, technology. So anything that to do with
Like if we break
ransomware
the iPads or something.
Yeah, we have a $2 million policy on like ransomware.
So we
As
have
part of
to
this.
liability insurance as well.
We do.
Okay, so that's if somebody gets sued or.
Yeah, so the board has policies. We've got, and the policy also covers administrators, principals. I will,
Or
after the meeting, I'll send you each the kind of the cover sheet of what other policies that we have. So it's
Okay.
a 1-pager that will show you what we have. We have about, we do it through one company, but it's obviously 5 different providers or 6 different providers, depending on what the, cyber attack and board liability.
if you know insurance, even if the policy is written by, say it's Aetna, Aetna may decide that total policy is too, the amount is too large for them to cover all at once. And so behind the scenes, they may parts it out to multiple insurance companies. I forget what the term is, reinsurance or something like that. You may not, you would be unaware of it, but anyway, yeah, I'd be interested.
What is so I know about the workers' comp piece more from the city, and I know the city has really gotten its workers' comp down by doing things like the fire department does stretches at the beginning of every day. No, it's Public Works. They do stretches. And is our workers' comp claims high? And if so, what are we trying to do to reduce those, if that's possible, depending on why we actually have worker comp issues?
They were very high. We were in a very high risk category. We've continually lowered that to the point where I think this year our experience rating has really helped us, has really benefited us. Not only did we get a refund from last year's policy premiums that we're paying less this year than we have been in the past. So for us, it's been just focusing on it. It's getting people off workers' comp as quickly as possible. It's working with our insurance carrier to get people back to work. And it's preventing workers' comp. It's training them on ladders and doing what we can to reduce our slip and fall. Slip and fall is going to be is the biggest category for any business. And so by the RSU taking responsibility for our own property and not relying on our contracted snowplow provider to do that, we've made it very clear to the facility staff and the principals and custodians that they're responsible. If they see something, they're responsible for making the pathway safe. We bought salt spreaders for every single school to make sure they all have the tools that they need to make sure that we're as safe as we can be. You can't, I mean, this weather we've had recently, it's hard to keep up with some of these things because the ice is just there.
Yeah.
But we buy pallets and pallets of ice. When we get low, we're buying ahead, and just continually focus on our daytime custodians to make sure they're in on time and take the responsibility and the pride of a safe building.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if it's worked, but the numbers are showing that something's working.
Sure. Well, and that's good. You're moving in the right direction. Maria, did that answer all of your questions about property and casualty insurance?
Yeah, no, since I'm new, it of course has spawned other questions, but I'm not going to ask them because we're going to turn into pumpkins pretty soon. So
You're
Lauren's-
also totally
Lauren's
welcome.
very
to
orange.
Pete. I'm offering Pete's meeting time up, but he's always welcome. He's always welcomes people. The only thing we haven't talked about are budget cross-section requests. So what I'd like to ask people to do is to think a little bit about what you would like. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone if you'd like to talk things through what you'd like to see as part of our budget process. So thinking about like what kinds of data would be helpful, going back to what Eileen King said, what kind of data do you need to be able to make a decision on the budget? And then what I can do is compile that and chat with Pete about it. And so since we don't have time in the meeting, I'm perfectly happy to spend some time talking to people individually to go over some of that. And then Pete, we can talk about that.
Well, if you want to, whenever you want to end the meeting, go ahead. And then I'm happy to stay on after the meeting offline with anybody who wants to stay on and just kind of talk cross sections.
Okay.
So
No, no.
it's-
Yeah, I'd be fine with that too.
I get eyes crossed with the cross section talk, so I probably won't continue.
That's fair.
exactly. I'm giving you an out, Lauren.
Don't worry, we won't count
Hey,
pencils,
John.
but we're gonna count boxes of pencils. All right. Okay, so I'm happy to stay on for a minute or two. Maria,
Okay,
what did
so,
you say?
I said paper clips, count those.
There we go. Yes, those
are
are
we
very
adjourned?
important too.
If we're adjourned, I'll stop the live feed.
All right.
Well, we need to talk about the non-aligned idea that you have.
Well, I mean, we can just push that to the workshop. 'Cause
Mm,
that's where it was originally settled.
I know that, but I'd like to talk about it now. You guys have. talked
It's
about it.
not part of it's not part of the meeting. It wasn't, at least on anything I got.
Yeah, it was there in an email today. I think it was today.
What time did you send the email out?
I don't know, Pete. Was it yesterday or yesterday you sent the email?
1:45 today.
1:45.
Yeah,
I
and I
didn't-
didn't check
I
my
looked
email
at
till 4.
I
I
looked
will
at the
say-
email at 2 o'clock and I didn't see it.
Yeah, I will say, Lauren, I'm a little confused because you and I had the conversation about whether to have it in finance or on the board level, and we disagreed about it. But I asked for it to be put on the workshop agenda, and I followed the policy. So I'm not sure why we're now doing the opposite of what I asked.
I'm following John's lead.
All right, I think it's time to adjourn the meeting, and we'll. move
I'm not sure about that. I think for starters, I'd like to ask Maria and Dave if they are willing to add this item to the agenda. And if we are adding the item to the agenda, we can talk about it. We can talk about the rest of it separately.
Fine,
but-
I can hang on, I don't.
I think the item was, I think at the last meeting, it was accepted that it would be done at the workshop. And I think that's where it should be done.
I am open to whatever, people want to do. I'm not close to anything. I just want to get it done and behind us. That's all. As we enter budget season, I just want this to be, we as a school board, we're clear on how we're doing this. That's
Yeah,
all
and
I care. That's all I care about. But there's no questioning, there's no weirdness. It's just, yeah, this is how we do it. It's great.
I
You said-
fully support that. I will say, it sounds like people haven't had a chance to look at the agreement, the salary, the schedule, that Pete sent out, and I think this is solid. I have a couple of things that I do want to talk about though. So it sounds like people aren't terribly comfortable with adding the item to the agenda. Am I accurately hearing that or not?
I didn't see the item to look at it, so.
Maria?
So which email is this? Because I've got email open, and the last email from you, Pete, is the one where you sent all these documents that pertain to nutrition. And you talk about you did a copy paste from a spreadsheet for the grants, the ESSER grants.
Yeah, it's personnel planning in that same email.
Okay.
So can I say something? So
Sure.
to be clear, I have no problem with it being part of a workshop, for the record. We added it or wanted to add it to the facilities committee just so they could get a look at it first. But we didn't obviously have time to do that tonight, or members didn't see it, whatever. So it's not a whole workshop. Trust
No,
me.
I think it's a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, I think it is too. So I have no problem with it on the workshop. That's not even a thing. So there we go.
So let's
Alright.
do that. And then Pete, can you make sure this document gets out to the rest of the board for that workshop? As well as the ESSER and the debt stuff, because that seems like that's really relevant for all of those presentations. And I certainly had some questions about that. Okay. Are we all on the same page? Does everybody feel comfortable with that decision?
Yep, all good.
Okay. All right. In that case, yes, we can adjourn the meeting unless are there any objections?